Hey, this is Jason Creel, and you're watching The Lawn Care Life. I did a series of 101 questions that are commonly asked by people in the lawn care business, and I've broken that up into 5 different videos with 20 questions each. I guess one of them will have 21 to get the full 101 questions. But we're going to take 20 questions in this video that are commonly asked, and I'm going to give you my answers on them, and look forward to hearing from you guys in the comments on what you think about my answers and how it's benefited you. Stay tuned. I'm on question number 21, and it's how much do you charge for pine straw installation? Now, you know, the price of pine straw varies by region. And I know a lot of places use mulch, a lot of places use pine straw. You know, I used to buy pine straw for $4 a bale. Sometimes it's more like $5 a bale. And I tell you, it's not a huge money maker, honestly. I mean, I think you should charge probably at least $10 a bale to have it, to buy it and install it. So you might, let's say if you got it for $5, you're only making $5. Well, if you're doing 100 bales, you know, that's $500, and with a crew, that doesn't take that long. So, I mean, it can be sort of profitable. What comes sometimes if you do like 5 bales and you made $5 per bale, that's only $25. It's not really worth it. So pine straw is not a big profitable thing to me. You do it at your convenience. You don't make a special trip out to put out 5 bales of pine straw. It's just not worth it. Mulch. You know, if let's say you're paying $35 for a scoop of mulch, you might charge 4 times that to install it, at least 3 times. So I'm thinking anywhere from $100 to $130 or something to install that mulch, because you're talking about time consuming from going to get it to installing it to blowing off everything to making sure it looks good. It's a lot of work involved, and that can actually be profitable, probably more profitable for the pine straw. You can charge more for the pine straw. I just don't know if people are willing to pay it. You know, if you start charging $12 a bale, maybe they will, but you know, it's not that profitable in my opinion. Next question, how many days a week should you work in your lawn care business? Well, this can be a little tricky. When you're starting off, you don't have that much work to do, and you're just wanting to work anytime you can. Okay, but once you get established and become busy, one of the problems that lawn care businesses have is being dependable. And so what I tried to do was just schedule 5 days a week, okay? And Saturday was kind of my rain makeup day. So let's say, you know, it rained on Tuesday. Well, Tuesday's schedule got pushed back to Wednesday. Wednesday got pushed back to Thursday. And, you know, Friday was kind of Saturday was the makeup day. To me, if you schedule yourself for 6 days and then you have one of those weeks where it rains 3 days in a row, you're going to be in a real bind. So I like to be dependable to the customer, so I didn't like to overbook myself. Also, once I became established as a mowing operation, personally, I began as the owner to take Mondays off myself. Now, the crew would still work. It did a couple things. One, it allowed you to develop a crew leader who could run the crew, and that's important to have when I wasn't there, the owner. And 2, it allowed me as the owner to go do other things that needed done in the business, whether that was going after more business or doing maintenance on something. You know, there was just a lot of things that only the owner can do, or the owner can do best, and having that one day off really, not off, but to focus on those other things was important for the success of my business. Next question. What time should you start working in the mornings? You know, I think this is a big advantage, in my opinion, of having some commercial properties. I like having commercial properties because that's one reason you can get out there early. You know, especially in the summertime, if I know that it's going to be 97 degrees today, then I'm thinking, don't mind getting up a little bit early and getting out there when the weather's cool. And you can't go to somebody's house, a residential property, at 6:30 in the morning. You're going to make some people upset. But if there's just a commercial property that nobody lives around, you can get out there at 6:30 in the morning, and it's no big deal. It gives you an earlier start where you might can finish earlier in the day. I think that's, you know, advantageous. Now, if you're doing residential properties, I personally try not to get there before like 8 o'clock or so. I mean, maybe 7:30 if you talk with the customer and they're okay with that. But, you know, much earlier than that, you're going to affect some neighbors and have some people upset about you. Next question. should you run your own lawn care business or should you eventually hire a crew chief? Well, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, personally for me, I like to establish it myself, okay? I'm running the business, and like I said, eventually I might start weaning myself off from the labor side. So let's say I was working 5 days a week and then I took Mondays off to work on other things, okay? Well, that lets me start developing that crew chief and to see how that goes, okay? Now, eventually, I could wean myself off a little bit more, branch into another area. Maybe I wanted to say, okay, the mowing crew's running good. I'm gonna start going over here and working on some landscaping. That's something I've always wanted to do, or get into weed control and fertilization, or whatever. You've got another thing that you're trying to break off into, or you want to start a second crew and you want to grow, you know. So it's important to be able to develop people within your business to be able to handle responsibility so it's not all dependent on you. So yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, to my opinion, you run it yourself, but you start developing people to replace yourself, because eventually if it's all dependent on you, there's only so big that your company can grow. Next question, should I make my customers sign a contract? Well, personally, I do contracts with my commercial accounts that are paying year round. And I don't think it's a bad idea to have some sort of written agreement if you're doing a year round contract with a residential customer. But for people who just wanted the seasonal mowing, I didn't do contracts. I found it something that people are hesitant to sign. They don't, you know, it just, to me, it's a barrier. People don't want to sign something. It's often a question I get. They say, hey, do I have to sign a contract? They're asking because they don't want to. So to me, there was more negatives than positives from it. One, it's going to be hard to enforce that on a residential property. And two, from my understanding, you have to consult a lawyer about this, but even a verbal agreement is legally binding. You know, if you agreed to hire me to perform a certain task and I did the work and then you didn't pay, in my understanding, that is, we had a legally binding verbal agreement. So again, enforcing those things, whether verbal or in writing, may be more challenging, but I found the contracts to be more of a barrier to getting a customer than it was a benefit. What type of software do you use? I tell people a lot of times I recommend Yardbook. That's the software that I'm using to run my company. They have a free option and then there's some paid features. But to me, it's very user-friendly. It's cloud-based. They have an app that works that I use regularly. So there's a lot of benefits to it, to setting up your scheduling with built-in credit card processors, to invoicing, to, you know, just a lot of features that are very beneficial and user-friendly for a lawn care business. There are other software options out there. People use Jobber, people use Service Autopilot, people use Real Green. There are more I'm sure I'm leaving out, but there's some other options to look into. Next question, how do you handle billing in the lawn care business? Well, how I handled it and how I probably should handle it, because I'm always rethinking this from a perspective of cash flow and how can I get the cash flow flowing quicker, you know? So, and how can I avoid delayed payments or no payments, that sort of thing. So, and I get a lot of feedback from people on YouTube on how to do this, so I like your feedback. You have ideas in the comments section. But you know what I did for a long time was I would mow somebody's grass for the month and I would send them a bill at the end of the month. Well, it may take them, you know, 2-3 weeks after that to pay it. So I mean, I really would be quite a number of weeks from the time I was doing the work till I got paid. I don't think that's ideal, because sometimes one, the cash flow is too slow, and then two, you know, if somebody was trying to take advantage of you, I mean, you might be in 6 mowings before they pay you, and if they didn't pay, you might be out 6 mowings or have to take action to try to collect for those 6 lawn care services you provided. So I like some of the ideas that people are doing. What I'm doing now is with weed control and fertilization, I leave a bill at the time of the service, okay? And I don't perform another service until that service has been paid for. So worst case scenario, if I stick to that, is I'm only gonna, be out one service behind. I'm not coming back to do another service. So I like that. You could do that in mowing, but it's a lot of transactions. But you know what? With today, a lot of people using credit cards, you can get a credit card on file, and you can, if you have a problem and you're worried about collections, you can require that, and you can charge it every time that you go out there to mow. The customer doesn't have to do anything. And that way you never miss a payment, okay, and you're never behind. So that's one option. Or some people even will leave the invoice at the beginning of the month or in the middle of the month, and they have it, where it's due within 14 days. So let's say that you leave the bill at the beginning of the month and it's due by the middle of the month. Or you leave it at the middle of the month, it's due by the end of the month. So it's shortening up that cash flow window, putting less of the financial burden on you, the business owner, and putting it back on the customer. So I like those ideas. I probably should have done a better job of implementing those, but for me now, like I said, I'm leaving an invoice at the time of the service, and that has been a benefit. The other thing I've done is I've started to call people quicker. So if they're late on their bill, I'm going to call them, text them, email them a lot quicker instead of letting that delayed bill become longer and longer. Next question is related. What do you do if somebody doesn't pay? Okay. Well, obviously, let me say this, and I think it's worth saying, because sometimes you give people the benefit of the doubt and you trust them. Stop the service if they haven't paid. Okay. Don't say, if they say, well, I'm gonna pay you, next month, and I'll pay. No, stop the service. Okay. Stop the service. You don't want to get in a habit where you're financing the mowing for it. If they can't afford it, they can't afford it. And I would say this too. If you have somebody that's a late payer regularly, you need to put a credit card on file or make them pay you up front, or you're not doing the work. Okay, don't get in a habit where you're regularly having to follow up with people to try to collect the money. So if they don't pay, you got a couple things. There's some services out there to help you collect. But you do everything you can in a polite way to try to collect the payment, through calling them, texting them, emailing, those sort of things. But like I said, once you have established that this person is a late payer, in my experience, the ones who are late one time are the ones who are late regularly, okay? So don't think, well, it just, and I'm not saying it can't happen. Sometimes people forget, and they literally are just late one time where they lost the invoice or forgot or something. But oftentimes it's a person, it's habitual, and they're regularly late. And once you figure that out, especially if it happens 2 times, at that point, you know what, they're going to be a prepaid customer or have a credit card on file. And I'm not doing any more service until I collect up front. And a lot of those customers, you know what happens? They disappear because they don't want that obligation. They like having, they like being months late. I'm not saying like it, but they don't want to pay up front, and so they're no longer a customer. And that's okay with me. Should you ever fire a customer? Unapologetically, I think the answer is yes. I think it's almost healthy for you as a business to fire a customer every once in a while. Not in a rude way, not in a screaming Donald Trump, you're fired kind of way, but in a polite way, just saying, you know what, this isn't working out. I don't, for whatever reason, I think it's going to be best if you work with a different lawn care provider. Now, why would you do that? Well, obviously, if it's somebody that's not paying, okay, you got to get rid of them. But sometimes the expectations are not being met for whatever reason. Somebody, as you hire them for a certain price to do a certain work, and then all of a sudden the customer starts trying to add to that list of work. You're paid to cut the grass, and they want to know, can you keep my flower beds clean of weeds, or can you trim my hedges? Is that, and they get offended if that's not included, or there's just something where they're always dissatisfied. Or you keep having to make special trips out there. Their regular mowing days on a Thursday, and for regularly they're saying, well, I'm having a special event, can you come on Friday? And it's fine every once in a while, but part of what makes a lawn business successful is being efficient and being scheduled. And if a customer becomes a situation where you have to keep doing special things for a particular customer, it can affect the way your whole business operates. Like I said, once in a while is okay. If it's regular, I think sometimes it's time to move on. Again, same thing, if they complain a lot and it's just obvious that you're not satisfied, that they're not satisfied, then you might recommend moving on. You know what the funny thing is, sometimes I've had that happen where somebody be a regular complainer and I feel like I'm going out of my way to make this person happy. Okay, and they're complaining, and you go to them, you say, you know what, this isn't working out. It seems like I'm not being able to make you happy. I think it would be time for you to look for another lawn care provider. What happens? They say, oh, no, I don't want anybody else. I want you to do it. And the complaint stops. So sometimes it's just the threat of leaving, and it's not just a threat. I mean, I'm literally gonna leave, but they'll stop because they know that, hey, you are doing a good job, and they're just trying to push the limits. So sometimes you gotta stand your ground, and they'll back off of the complaining. Sometimes you just have to break free, move on, and don't look back. How do you sharpen your lawnmower blades? Well, to me, I've done it several ways. What I do, I just have a car jack, and I jack up the mower and put the jack stands on there for safety. And then I have an air compressor with an impact wrench. You take the blades off with that. And then I put the blades in a vise, a bench vise, and I have a little handheld grinder with a 5-inch wheel on it. And you just sharpen them with that 5-inch wheel. It's very easy. Most of the time it's just the tip of the blade that's dull because that's what does most of the cutting. You're not trying to get the blade razor sharp because it's not going to hold razor sharp anyway. What you're trying to do is put a decent edge on it without taking off too much of the metal. You can usually sharpen the blade several times, and eventually they get so dull that after multiple sharpenings that, you know, it's time to get a new set of blades. So I like to have several sets of blades for a mower, keep them sharp. That way when I take an old set off, I can go ahead and put the new set on and sharpen the old set when I get time. Another thing that's cool is those mower jacks. You know, I don't have one, but if you have a mower jack where you can, you know, pull the front tires in this mower jack and flip it up and it picks your mower up. I like those things, and I wouldn't mind having one day. How do you drain the oil in your lawnmower? Well, you know, a lot of push mowers, you know, especially residential ones, there's no real drain plug sometimes. You just take the oil cap off and you literally flip the mower upside down. Now some of the nice ones probably have a hose with a drain plug, and that's easy. You know, and that's the way most zero-turn mowers work. There's a drain plug, you remove it, drain the old oil, and put the drain plug back, replace the oil filter, and pour the new oil in. So it's no big deal. A lot of times oil changes, you can look at your engine manufacturer's guide there and see what it says. It's usually somewhere between 50 and 100 hours is a required time to change the oil on the mower. What I like to do too, if when maintenance and stuff like that, the required maintenance like greasing and changing oil, things like that, I like to keep a little dry erase board and write down the mower and the hours when it was last done, and that way I can keep up with it when it needs done again. How often should you sharpen your lawnmower blades? Well, I've had people tell me they sharpen them every day. I mean, I think some people talking about even sharpen them in the field multiple times a day. I never understood that. I mean, I try to sharpen mine once a week when I was mowing regularly, and that's, you know, ideally you could do it more than that, but once a week at least I would try to do everything that needed done on the mower, including sharpening the blades and, you know, putting that, and that worked decent. Like I said, when you, after a week of cutting full time, they're dull, okay, they need sharpened. So ideally if you could do it more, that'd be great, but I would say at a minimum once a week if you're mowing full time. How often should you change the oil in the mower? I already answered this one. I didn't know that question was coming up, but it's usually every 50 to 100 hours. There might be a break-in oil change on a brand new engine after like 10 hours or so. How did I get ripped off by lawnmower mechanics? Well, you know what? There's kind of a love-hate relationship with lawnmower shops, lawnmower mechanics. And I think you got to find one that you can work with, that you trust, okay? That's important. It is a relationship. And a lot of times, unless you're a very handy person, that's somebody that you might need one day. So I try not to look at them as your enemy. At the same time, I think there's some things you can learn to do yourself so that you're not fully dependent on them. And oftentimes, little small repairs, things that you can order your parts online if you want to save a little money. So there's things like that. I think it's like anything, like having a car mechanic or having anybody that's providing a service for you. You find somebody that you trust, you build a relationship, and you find them that's honest. And if you find that they're ripping you off, you know what, you're gonna have to go somewhere else. So I think a couple things: do the small repairs yourself if you're able. Shop online for parts if you're able to do that. And then when you need a major repair of some kind of part that you have to get from the dealer, like I said, find that dealer that you know that you can work with. Where do you buy printing materials like business cards, postcards, those sort of things? I've got where I pretty much just use Vistaprint. It's the biggest one out there to my knowledge. There are others, but Vistaprint is typically cheap, and in my opinion, their quality has improved over the years. I find that their business cards, postcards, the quality of the paper, the thickness of the paper is better than I remember it being in the past. So Vistaprint is at least a place to start. They have most everything. Next question, and this is an important one: how do I get customers for my lawn care business? Well, we've talked about some marketing methods, but let me first start by saying sometimes this is going to be a slow go in the early going. I mean, because nobody knows about your business. So you have to use some techniques that you might not want to do later on. Let's say you're even going to go door to door and talk to people. It's not comfortable, but it does work. But if you're going to do postcards and door hangers and things like that, they're not going to produce a very high return. But if you are starting out and you put those out by the thousands, then it can give you that initial customer base to get you going. Again, building those relationships, starting to build an online presence, doing Facebook ads, Google ads, Thumbtack.com. Some people use Home Advisor. I like Thumbtack personally a little bit better. But you know, there's things you can do to get some business going in, but eventually once you get established and you start getting those referrals from your existing customers, that's when it becomes a lot easier to get customers. So just understand it's going to be tough probably in the early going. Do everything you can to meet people, to put your name out there, and knowing that, you know what, I'm building something that in the future it's going to be a lot easier to get customers. Should I buy an enclosed trailer or an open trailer? Well, there's advantages of both. I personally like the open trailer, the easier to access your equipment. You know, it just is. Enclosed trailer, sometimes it's just real tight in there and you got to walk around things. Now, obviously on an enclosed trailer, it's more expensive, but you have the added security of keeping out of the weather, maybe a little bit easier to lock everything up. So there's some benefits to that. It ultimately comes down to personal preference. For me, I just preferred the open trailer. And like I said in another video, I'm not so sure that eventually I wouldn't look into getting some sort of cab over truck that had the attached gate onto it where you can just pull the mowers right up onto the back of the truck. I like that idea too. What should you name your lawn care business? Well, find something you like, okay? But don't find something that you just like. I mean, run it by a few people. Make sure this thing doesn't sound ridiculous, okay? I don't think there's anything wrong in naming your business after your own name. You know, my name's Jason. If I'm gonna name it Jason's Lawn Service or whatever. But personally, I don't do that. I don't like I said, if you've done that, I don't think it means you have to go change or anything. I mean, there's plenty of big businesses out there that are just named after somebody, okay? But I like to think of something that sounds a little bit bigger than just one person. So I try to think of something that's professional and sounds big. And also, I use the word lawns in my business for a couple reasons. One, I want that showing up on the internet when people are searching for lawns or lawn care. And then two, I want it to be broad enough to where I can expand into something else one day. So I might not name my business Jason's Mowing because it kind of established me as a mowing business. And what if one day I want to expand into something else? But if it was Jason's Lawn Care, well, that sounds like I could maybe do a number of things. Again, I don't call mine Jason's Lawn Care. I like something a little more professional sounding, a little broader, but nothing cheesy in my mind. I think the ideal business name is both marketable and professional. I kind of lean more towards just being professional, even if it's not as memorable. But if you've got something that's real catchy, that's fine as long as it don't border on cheesy. Run it by some people, make sure that it sounds appealing to them, because remember, it's not just for you. This is to appeal to a broader range of people. Two more questions on this video. Where do I get a logo? Well, there's these design contests out there like 99 Designs, things like that. I actually sell logos on my website, start-lawncarebusiness.com. I don't make a lot of money off of those, so but you can check those out if you want. You can have a graphic designer create you one. Sometimes that can get a little expensive, but you can do these design crowd 99 Designs contests and probably get a good looking logo if you're willing to spend a little bit of money. What kind of insurance do you need? Well, most of the time just for a lawn care business, people are going to want to get some sort of commercial liability policy that may have $1 million limit. I mean, talk to your insurance agent about that. I work through a local insurance agent who has me set up on this commercial liability policy that covers me in case something happens. Important lesson I learned early in my lawn business is don't make small claims. If you break a window, just pay for the window out of the pocket. And if you start claiming those things on your insurance, it's likely that your insurance is going to go up significantly, and you would have been a lot cheaper just paying for the damage. Now, the insurance is there. If you need it for something important, expensive, use it. Don't use it on the small things. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do the next question since it's related. How much does that business insurance cost? I found it typically somewhere between I'm going to say $700 and $1,000 a year for a policy like I'm talking about, commercial liability, maybe with a $1 million limit. Again, let your insurance agent guide you on that. This is actually 21 questions for this video. If you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel. There are more videos out there. There's 101 questions total, so check those out. And check out the other videos on the channel. And let me hear from you in the comments on your thoughts on what I've said, maybe some other questions that you have. And I look forward to talking to you in future videos. Thanks a lot.